Hey everyone, it's Manny from Manny's Mic Locker, the Chavez Ravine. I'm super pumped to share that video with you, and I know, what does that video have to do with my studio tour? I thought about it like, if I'm going to do a tour, at least I should show what I do for my living and what I really enjoy doing, which is recording full bands. Virginia Reed is a super influential band in my life. Their style of playing and how we did the recording of layers and layers and layers of heavy instruments, and I don't mean heavy as far as like Mesa Boogies, I'm just talking weird amps, weird tuned guitars, and we built this cacophony of basically lightning in a bottle. I believe we captured. That video was directed by Gus Black, who's a dear friend, so this is all in the family of not only the band, Keith the vocalist, Brian the drummer, Jeff the bass player, and John the lefty guitarist. We all came together and we made something that I'm super proud of. So if I have to say, what does Manny's studio sound like? That's a great example. Pro Mix Academy is another option if you want to learn more about what that video was about and what the song was about. This course is going to be for Virginia Reed. You're going to get all the raw audio tracks. My template is really raw dog. Minimal plugins, but you get to hear what we committed to and then what were the challenges of making something that is already loud, already feedbacking, shaking in the room, and then capturing that and putting it into a left and right audio strip. Hope you dig it. Off to my tour. Hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, it's Manny here. I'm here for Produce Like a Pro. This is going to be somewhat of a tour of my new spot. I also wanted to touch on a few things. You know, there's a lot of people that make a living or have been producing for a lot of years. Myself, you have to really kind of adapt to the current situation. You know, we're in Los Angeles and it's really expensive. In all honesty, people think I'm a fancy pants, I drive a nice car, or like I live in a house up in the hills. I don't. So this whole tour is basically about surviving in LA. And I had 2 rooms I used to lease, and because of the current situation, it's not even that you're making enough money, it's that you're just not making enough money. And I had to sublet part of my studio and move all my gear into one room. And the challenge was, I can't say how am I going to do that, because for a lot of years I did that. When I traveled through China for 2 years, mostly recorded bands in the same room. I've gone over to Daniel Lavoie's and he has his mixing console right in front of the drum set. So there are producers and people that have done that for years. I even think Sylvia Massey does that. But I've been in a situation where the luxury of being able to get drum sounds from another room is not there anymore. But the best thing is, though, I've never really, maybe since my first few years of recording, I've never been one of those guys where I'm checking the tom and like I'm EQing it. I'm looking at levels. I know what my mics are going to do. So this idea of applying it in this situation is something that has to happen. And luckily enough, I've done it enough where I can honestly do a whole sound check with no audio, have the band play, and know exactly what my mics are going to do, the distance to the instruments, and maybe on a playback be able to go, maybe, you know, I got to check that tom and maybe move the mic a little bit or add a mic to the session. This is the reality check. There's no fancy pantses here. How am I going to survive? How am I going to make a living doing what I do, continually do what I do? And as most of you know, going down to Home Depot or building out or doing anything is incredibly expensive. Even something as silly as a plywood 4x6 maybe is almost $100. So I built all these gobos, I recycled a lot of stuff, and I soul searched. You know, I had to search if I was going to close down my studio or was I going to be able to keep it open. So being crafty enough, almost at the last minute, I leased my mixing room to a local cat that is just one of the best repair guys in the city. So not only in my building, but next door to me is a guy that can fix amps, guitar pedals, and kind of was really cool because he wanted to move out of his house into a commercial space. This is a commercial space. Building with probably 4,000 musicians. Every room has 3 bands in it, and there's probably 100, 200 rooms of floor. So do the math on it. It's really epic to survive anywhere. And, you know, in all due to what you see on YouTube and what you see in the world, sometimes it's not what you think it is. There's a lot of guys I know that they're in the back of their mom's house, you know, and their mom does their laundry, but yet they're like, oh yeah, my studio and how I do it, and you're going to get this plug-in because da-da-da, and then mom yells, hey, do you want your dinner? Oh, no, mom, hold on, I'm filming, you know. So there's a lot of that going on. There's guys that are driving Porsches, and it's a Ponzi scheme. I mean, they're just spending money to live this luxury life for you, to believe that when they say buy this, do this, that's what you're going to be getting. Oh, I want that. I want tattoos and I want that. Oh, I want that hot girlfriend, and I want to play this music. Well, guess what? The reality is that is not a reality. It's a Ponzi scheme. That guy's lucky enough, and I wish him well. There's a lot of guys I know that are two-income families, which they could not do it without their wife. I personally could not do it without my wife. We're two artists. We need both of our incomes to survive. So this is really an honest opinion and a lifestyle. My studio, down to the microphone, down to every speaker, has been through blood, sweat, and tears. If you know my journey, if you look on Tape Op, you'll see me traveling around China with like 150 pounds of gear, recording bands in Cold War bunkers in China, traveling around the world, almost dying a bunch of times. That wasn't for show. If Instagram, and it wasn't even back then, it was strictly a learning process. Could I survive? Do I want to be an artist? Do I want to record artists? I wanted to know what true artists do, and that was soul searching for myself as well. So I've learned a lot over the years, and then to arrive finally, I'm in a commercial space, and then I almost cannot afford to be in a commercial space anymore. I don't have a mom. I can put the studio in the back. I don't own a house or property that I can make the garage into a studio. So just be aware of what you're seeing. And when someone says, you got to buy this, because I'm telling you, just everybody has their own skeletons in the closet of how they arrived, where they arrived. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of friends that have been doing this for a lot of years. I'm 25 years on. This is all I've ever done. The only time I stopped recording is when my father died. My mom asked me to close the studio. I needed to take care of my father. I closed the studio, put it in mothballs. My dad died a month later. And there I was with my father dead, my studio's in mothballs, and I had to go work security at a door. I was checking your ID when you're coming in. Hey, Manny, can I see your ID? I had to do that for a year and eat cans of tuna, because I could not survive anymore as an artist, and I had to get a job. So when someone says you're doing something that's like, that guy, he's a phony or what, I'm not saying, I don't even know what they would say. Almost everything I do in my life is strictly because I like it or love it and I want to do it. And I just think that that's just being honest. Anybody that you see doing this, where are they? Any studio can be made out of an office space, out of your mom's back room or your father's back room. And there's one guy that's on YouTube where he was cool. He showed his pops helping him, get rid of the drums and put electronic drums so things wouldn't be noisy, putting up lights. And it's a whole show. They're really believing their son can do something and do a show and tell and a song and dance to sell gear and to be someone on YouTube. So you should know that for me personally, me doing these shows for Warren and Manny's Mic Locker, it's strictly out of the love of what I do. It happened to work out where Warren had approached me and he really liked the way I was recording bands. And if you notice, every time I do a tutorial or do a mic thing, I'm really using local bands. Besides doing covers sometimes to try out some microphones and then bring some really killer musicians together, those are the only times that something you could say would be contrived. I'm just like, man, I would love to do that Van Halen song. Come on, Jimmy, everybody get in there, let's do it. And I'll bring some people together and I'll film it. But it's also to showcase something I believe in, like microphones. I picked Warm Audio. I'm not paid by Warm to talk about their microphones. I just want to know, as a producer, if I got a box full of Warm Audio mics, I record a great drummer, what results would I get? And I did it. If you look up a few months back or about a month ago, there was a Warm Audio video under Produce Like a Pro that I did. You should check it out, because that is a real drummer being recorded with affordable mics. And that's the kind of way I live my life. I have some mics that are worth thousands of dollars, but I cannot tell you to buy the mic that's worth $1,000 that it won't do the same as a mic that's worth $600 or $700. Because I think the variable is the musicians and how and the format and the platform you work on. For instance, an electronic guy, some guy that sat in his room, or a woman. I've seen videos of these girls that looks like they just open their laptop and they sing their heart out. And people are flopping over in love with how they sound. And they did it in their room. Like, that doesn't scare me. That just makes me go, oh my God, that is modern technology. My thing is, I don't do boy bands. I want a drummer. I want a musician. And that, in turn, is my skill set. Microphones, bands, performance, instruments. I don't have a library of violins and cellos and explosions and, a meteorite coming into the earth and I drop a sub-low sample. I just don't do that. So I rely on what Abbey Road would rely on. Here's a funny joke. Guy's at Abbey Road. He finally gets, some guy pays him to go to Abbey Road. He's up in the bird's nest looking down in the Beatles room. There's a guy playing the piano on a John Lennon mic. And that guy's just thinking, oh my God, this guy is just terrible. And that guy's just jumping away. I'm on, the mic that, John Lennon sang on. He's just stomping on the piano that everybody talks about. And the guy up in the bird's nest who's producing it is just going like, oh my God, what is this? Well, that's what it is, that you can't do anything without the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or whoever, XTC, whoever went into Abbey Road. If you're good enough to be aligned up with a great band or a great musician, in my world of recording, that is where you win. There's a lot of people on the other side of stuff that there's the guys that they can grab the bass and the guitar and they do a loop and then they have a whole song. There's a girl that plays drums, sings, and rocks out and does everything, and you're just blown away that that's her talent. And you know what they don't tell you? If I had someone come in and design this whole room and it ran up to $30,000, $40,000, will my records sound any better than me going down to a thrift store and spending $450 and doing the same kind of somewhat treatment? I don't know, tomato, tomato. Yeah, you go to Sunset Sound, you're going to spend $1,800 to $2,500 a day. Guess what? It better sound like exactly what you're hoping for. But we do not have that luxury anymore to sit there and rack up a $40,000 bill because we're going to hang out all day and play pool and shoot basketball in Sunset Sound. We don't. We work jobs. We spend whatever little money we had to buy things that we love. That being said, there's a lot of misconceptions about what you need to do to be a good producer, mixer, recording guy. Now, I'm going to strictly only be talking to the people that like engineering. I'm talking about when you have 4 or 5 people come in your studio and they come to you because they go, Manny, we want to make a record and we love what you do and we love your sound. So that is what I'm going to be talking about today on how I built my studio to adapt to my needs. And I'm hopefully show you some things that maybe you don't have to do, but I'm like, it's an option. You should be really creative. And if you look around my studio, it looks interesting and weird and strange. If you can look back in my previous mic locker with Dave Ketching and studio tour, that is the pinnacle of just the top of the mountain of craftiness and creativeness and just like the mics, the amps, the guy, even if there's another engineer in there and Dave Ketching isn't working the session, some person is going to leave from their life change because they played, the same stuff that Queens of the Stone Age used or Arctic Monkeys, or maybe not, just they're going to go out now and buy whatever they use there. I have 3 or 4 things that I've bought after leaving Dave Ketching's because it was really influential to me. But it really made me happy that this guy out in the desert had put together so many creative ingredients that made his studio awesome. So not being optimistic or pessimistic, I'm just letting you all know that really think about where you spend your money, how you spend your money, and don't believe the pipe dream that buying this microphone or buying this amp is going to change your life. Pro audio gear, compressors, and all those things, they don't really matter unless you know how to use them. We're going to get to the tour. Thank you for your time and letting me explain this to you. And this is just strictly my feelings about stuff and how I'm surviving as an artist in LA. But my life is in LA. I've been born and raised here. My family's here. My son's here. My best friends are here. My favorite restaurants are here. I love Los Angeles, and I'm just doing my best to survive here. So let me take you on a tour of how I saved money, and I'll show you how my situation changed from 2 rooms, and I came into 1 room, and how I'm resolving any technical issues I could find. It's not perfect, doesn't mean it's going to work, but it means, though, since I do this 7 days a week, sometimes 12 to 14 hours a day, in those hours I can find a window to make great music with great bands, still do content like you're getting right now, and then fulfill my life of being able to go and buy some nice coffee or get a Wagyu steak from, somewhere, go to Outback and get a, steak and lobster. That's my goal is to just live a better lifestyle. I know I'm joking about steaks and stuff. I'm just saying, as we do this for a living, you should really try to discipline yourself to remain as best as you can and alert when you do sessions. I try to come in every day and just be like, I'm ready. In the old days, I'd be like, take it or leave it, what anybody thought. Now my goal is to make the artist happy. It took me a lot of years to come to that approach, but if you can get the insight now to do whatever you can to make the artist happy, if you're supplying a service like recording them or being a producer, get on that road right now and just try to make both of yourself happy, because the best producers in the world, we can name all of them, there's moments where they've reached this harmonic between them and the artist, and it's perfect. Stay hungry and let's do it. All right, so here we are. I had the luxury for many years to have 2 rooms. On the other side of this wall, if you can see that red thing with the fan above it, that used to be my old control room, and I would look out into this room. So when I wanted to make this room be like my all room with drums, tracking, how do I get enough room in here? I have massive amount of gear everywhere, so it definitely is a cluster F of how am I going to make this happen. I was lucky enough to go over Daniel Lawaz, and I saw him recording in his basement. He had his console here, he had the drummers in the corner, and he had his guitar rig behind him, and it looked like he loved it. It looked like that whole process of being able to look at the musicians and play. So even though I've recorded for years in that same way and been in positions where I had my own mobile rig for years and used to record, I had to set up my room, and I really feel strongly that if you plan it, every studio I've ever built, I've only built it one time. I've never like built something and then had to redo it. So everything I put in here was definitely done for a reason. So I'm going to walk you through that, and on a budget. Like, how do you make this room work for you? So the first thing I did, where my door, I had to re-seal it and make sure that the door was sealed well. And that was probably the most expensive stuff, is going to Home Depot and getting it. So once I got that done, I even put the bottom, the top. This is from India. It was a blanket. My buddy gave it to me. And I just thought, why not just put this in front of the door so it's not another hard surface. It was given to me. It looks super cool. Then I went and I found 11-foot theater curtain out of Craigslist. And I had the extra wood and the rods. And I basically, those are coat hangers up there because this is really heavy. And I just use vintage coat hangers, and I basically, now my wall's black. So if I have a band in here and I'm recording, this is gone. The door is gone. We're in here. It looks like we've just sealed off the room. You can't escape. These beautiful things I bought out of Craigslist for $100.
I know.
They sat in the paper for almost a month, and I don't know why someone didn't buy it. If you look at the wheels, someone custom made this in the 70s. They made it, obviously the colors tell you it's like, you know, totally 70s, but they put hardwood floor, oak hardwood floor on the other side. They're both identical. They made custom wheels, real hardwood floor, real wood, real insulation. They weighed about 100 pounds a piece. And I put them in my truck, and I almost broke them unloading them, but I got them in the room. And these are lifesavers. And like I said, if you look around for vintage gobos, get a truck, do what you can. The cost of making this now would be, you know, $500 to $1,000 a piece. Where are you going to get machined wheels? You can figure that out, but still, this wood alone to get, even if you bought vintage wood, would cost so much money. And luckily enough, I got these intact. These plexiglass that on top, I had them about 3 years, and they were, at the beginning of the pandemic, all work stopped, everything stopped. I was still determined to make records, even with that in front of me. How am I going to make records? And I looked in the paper, a guy was selling 3 sheets of plexiglass for $600. Now you go, that's a lot of money. But at that time, you could not find plexiglass. All the big banks and stores were buying it, so it was almost impossible. But this is industrial plexiglass. If you go to Home Depot, a quarter of this is about $89. And that's just a quarter, and it's flimsy. This was industrial plexiglass with these special brackets. So I bought 3 of these. I had them stuck in a corner for a long time, didn't even know where I'd use them. When I came into this room now and I found myself in a position where I have to record everybody in the same room, I put these on the top, and I am shocked. When you get in this corner, it's like you just went into this sound chamber where all the sound stops. And that's what I love about it. So that was me spending a lot of money initially, and then recycling and using these again on top of these, because I have other baffles here, but it was too heavy. It wasn't until I got these that I realized that I can utilize these. So those are my baffles, my gobos, my theater curtain. Behind here hanging our other soundproof theater curtain that I found out of the paper for $100. Then we get into my cart. I used to take this cart from one room into the other room. So I was almost deciding, do I need this cart anymore? And I kind of do. I put drum percussions in the bottom. It's rated for like 500 pounds. You can get these like at a Harbor Freight or Home Depot, or look for them. They're super durable. I can put a Marshall stack on top of this and it's not going to break. So I have, when you look at movie productions out here, they have these little bags. Even though I think this is for golf balls, I put my tools in this and I just hang them from clamps. This, I think, was the one for golf balls. I put my headphones in this and my clips. I hang my cables from this, and then this is my little bag for my tapes. So I'm trying to keep organized in this mayhem. I don't have the luxury anymore of just having things laying around. I really have to keep everything together. So these bags, you think there's drums in them. There's no drums in these. And this, once again, is giving you little tips on how to save space and how to keep things organized. These bags are full of colored mic cables. So I know when I grab this bag, these are my colored mic cables. So when I do a drum set, I can trace the snare mic. Oh, it's a blue mic. The kick mic. Oh, it's a red mic. So buy colored mic cables so you can follow them back when you're in a super got to think quick. Something's not working. Where's the overhead? If you have all black microphone cables, yeah, you're going to be looking like you're following, the breadcrumbs to find out the source. So these two bags, this is like a Tom bag, and I went to Guitar Center, cheap. So this small one is for the cables. This one below is for bigger cables. I have some 25-foot cables that are really, really massive. I put them in there. This one is a little different. This probably fits the snare, but on this one, I've included all my guitar cables. I got some Megami, some regular ones. I mean, it's full, probably 20 pounds of guitar cables. So I don't have to necessarily search for a guitar cable when the band wants it, but they're here. So when I have a session, I pull the cart out and I just start grabbing the mic cables. And when I get done, even if I'm in a rush, I can just throw the mics up here and do it another time. So that's how my cart works. That's me utilizing drum bags for all your organization. That's why I have it. This is once again some guy made it in paper. It's obviously homemade, but it works good for me. It's dead on both sides.
I'm gonna have to look up on.
Same with this one. Now these ones. Oh, and this the last thing I did is I had a table that I made into a gobo over there, and I used the legs of the table and just put wheels on it, because now that I'm in one room, they're not that heavy, but to find myself in a position where I'm like, oh, I want to block the drummer from, the guitar rigs. So I put them there. Or if I'm mixing over here and I want to get more intimate mix and I really want to hear my speakers and I want to make my own sound pressure, I can move this here. And that's how I'm utilizing my space of roaming around. And then the coolest thing is I made these, so I put pegboard on one side, and this is old school like Sun Studios. I just thought it'd be cool if I'm doing a little guitar amp and I put it over there and I want to get some interesting reflections. Pegboard is like Sun Studios, and then this side is completely dead. So I have both sides. So if I have a drummer playing there and I want to get some slap back, I'll use it this way. If I have the drummer and I want him to get a more of a heavy sound, I don't want room sounds, I just want the mics, then I flip it around. If I'm monitoring here and I'm tracking a drummer, it doesn't matter what's going on here. I'm not even having my speakers on, I'm just basically doing this. So use I made these actually from the ground up. So bought the wood, bought the insulation, bought a table, made those into legs for the wheel. So that's this. The drum set obviously is mismatched. I got this from a Revival Drum Shop from Jose. He was in a band called The Breeders. He goes, I got a kick drum for you. I bought this vintage kick drum and it's been with me every day. I cannot tell you how much I love this kick drum. I recommend putting a hole in a big boy like this because it's like your beater is like hitting a basketball and it bounces back. Drummers enjoy it more with the hole in it. So these back here, if you can see them, and this is an interesting setup of gobos. And once again, this is all on a budget. I just came up with an idea of how I would do this. These are sawhorses. Now, most times you see a studio when they have the gobos, they go from the ground up. I kind of felt like I didn't want to suffocate the drums, but I don't want the cymbals to be bashing and going everywhere. So I was at Home Depot and there were $23, $24 for sawhorses. I made these baffles that were on the floor, and my mind just said, hey, what would that be if you just screwed them into those sawhorses and put wheels on? They all have wheels, and I roll them around. And then I realized that when I'm doing drum sounds, if you listen to anything I've done on the drums, it always sounds super heavy. It's because the sound pressure goes out in the bottom and it still sounds big and boomy, but all the cymbals and when they're bashing the cymbals, they're not that loud. So it's just a different theory of raising your baffles up, making sure the low end of the drums can still breathe out into the room. But your hi-hats, I bought these for $10. These are really expensive diffusers. I was at the Goodwill, I saw them, I knew what they were. They're like GKS, or there's a company that makes these. This used to be a table, and the legs of the table were the feet on that one. I just made this recently, so I saw a blue table, and it had two inserts in it. So I made one insert is inside this table, and I cut it, and then this is the outside gobo. I found these at a thrift store, and I just screwed those onto the top. And that's it. That's a velvet curtain I bought out of the paper. And it isn't pretty, but it is getting this different diffusion and nothing's the same kind of feeling. And, drums, they sound intense right here, and they sound big. And if you're playing drums, you feel the low end and the big sound, so you feel good playing drums. And that was important. And drums in a corner, I think drums sound better in a corner. So when I go to big studios and I see the drums out in the middle of the room and they've got all these room mics up, I'm like, that guy's blown it. Because as soon as you put gobos behind the drummer, you just intensify his tone. You lose all your low end in big rooms. Producers like Chad Blake, Ross Robinson, did some of the greatest records on earth, they prefer small rooms because the sound pressure. How much sound goes out and it hits the walls and comes back, that's loudness of a room. These have 11-foot concrete ceilings, so I really pushed the boundaries of space, but thank God for the concrete rooms. And this is a wall of windows that I open up into downtown LA. It's beautiful to be here in the nighttime recording, and drummers can play and they can see the 6th Street Bridge or downtown LA. So that's the drum setup. Everything was done purposely. This works out good. I wanted the band to walk in the door. This is the traffic of the band. They're all on this side of the room. No one's on my side. And they can just get ready and play. Now I'm in my corner of the room, and on the opposite side is where the drums are and the musicians are going to be. I had to once again make this part work for me. And most people know that when you're mixing, you do want to have your studio kind of in the middle of walls. So how is this working for me when I have this so close to the wall and then I've got nothing on this? So if I'm mixing, since the reason I put this on wheels was that reason. My other mixing room was about 16 feet wide, and I had a little bit of a playroom, and I had gear that was about this far away. So I basically, in my mind, kind of make a room the way I had in the other room. And I was pleasantly surprised. I immediately went from that room into this room, mixed a record, sounded exactly the way I wanted, because I'm really familiar with my sound system. I had to make sure, though, this wall is covered in producer blankets, and if you look them up online, they're incredible. And I can just only tell you that my walls are gone. My sound comes from here. I'm only hearing the speakers. I'm not hearing the walls. So I made it my point, if this is going to be my side of the studio, I have it double layered of this here, and it goes all the way to the back wall. All this is good for diffusion, but it's my way of storing what I need to get when I'm recording. So while I'm mixing, I have all my gear here to my side, which I can use. Everything I have, crazy enough, is from Audioscape. And once again, I'm not even lying or saying anything because I have this Audioscape here. I didn't have any outboard gear for years. I had consoles, I had bands, and I had preamps. And it wasn't until I was introduced, because they were really hard to get initially, I would always wait for it to get on the list to try to buy a piece of gear. The 76D was my first thing that I got from them. And I started committing to my guitars with compression, and they're affordable. These are all affordable. Then I got this standalone reverb unit, which has 12 springs in it. It can be tuned. Mind blown. Then in New York, when I was in AES, I demoed this one, and then a few months later, I got their LA 2A version. Bass guitar all the time, lead vocals. This is something new they came out with called an AS78. I had an original M78, which is what Bob Clear Mountain uses. If you look at Bob Clear Mountain, you'll see two of those. Or any great studio you go into now in the world, you're going to find a vintage one in there. Well, Audioscape made a recreation of the vintage one, and I got to say, I love it. Above that is my Echoplex for tape echoes for guitars. My main area that I live in is mostly preamps, minus my Allen Smart compressor. My listening system is called a DM7 discrete monitor system by Inward Audio. It's very hard to find, but this is what I select all my speaker selections: NS10s, ATCs. When I talked about I want things to sound really good, ISO Acoustics make these for your speakers. They sell pucks as well. You'll be shocked. Like, I had a dB meter, and let's say this is 90 dBs, and they're not on those stands, so it's at 90 dBs. As soon as you put these on the stands, now you're at 83 dBs. You lost 7 dBs of sound that was coupled into this board that's making noise. So you have like 7 extra dBs of sound that when you're mixing you don't need. And my low end became in the middle really focused. So spend the money. These are 100 and something a piece, but once again, when I talked about like priority, your listening environment is number one. These ATCs are the most least expensive ones they make. Sweetwater, you can get them for 3 payments of like $600. You get a power amp. I have a Yamaha power amp. You have to get, these are rated for 150 a side. You can't underpower them. You got to get a 300 watt power amp. That's what I powered these with, an old Yamaha. My NS10s sound better than any NS10s I've ever had in my life. And guess what? I've had 7, 8 sets of them. It always sounds the same because I have a Stewart power amp. And Stewart is a high fidelity company that makes incredible solid state power amps. And they make my NS10s sound so good and so accurate, better than even the Yamaha ones that came with it. So spend the money on your speakers, on the system. I'm a believer in tracking with preamps before EQs. And once again, a new addition, the V-Comp from Audioscape. And I cannot tell you enough, if you are a starving musician and you only got enough money to buy one piece of hardware, if you've got your preamps, then I would just say check out Audioscape. Once again, I'm not paid. I'm just saying, like, that really works. And they're all copies or recreations of classics that are basically just a toolbox in a studio. So when you think about a fancy producer that goes into Sunset Sound, it's not because it's at Sunset Sound that he's great. He's at a studio that has this toolbox that has just everything you would need to make a record. He just has to go in the back room and pull out the mic, the compressor. He got it. They got, I need a drum set. Can you send the drum doctor over and tune the drum set? They got it all. people like you and I, and I'll speak for the people that don't have a lot of money, we have to learn how to tune the drums. We have to learn how to buy extra snares. So that's part of the deal. So that is an expensive setup, but out of all the things I have, that's what I need to do to survive. When a band comes in to record, I need to give them back something that they're going to put in their iPhone, play it without headphones and be like, yeah, sounds heavy. I can hear the kick drum and the bass. Or go, where's the bass guitar? And I'm like, oh, damn. Then I have to get in here and make the bass come through the iPhone. This is now the standard, which is crazy. But luckily enough for my music that I make is usually large and obnoxious and big. It always cuts through on iPhone. So I've not had no problems with my mixes sounding crazy cool. But it's a particular style of how I make records, which is rowdy, raw. I guess there is a Manny style. I don't know what it is, but when you hear on my records, there's a thread that runs through them all that makes you go like, oh, that's extreme, but that's cool. I can't tell you I don't even know how to make a record another way. So, that is. So this is my setup for mixing. I've got preamps lined up, Cytec preamps. These are $800. These are basically 4 preamps for $800. That is technically a Nieto console, which is the Nirvana records and Steve Albini. Cytec is Neotech. So I buy 2 of these or 3 of these to have up to 8 to 12 channels. That's basically a console of preamps. And then a Vetus, and everything else is Brent Averill. And if you don't know who Brent Averill is, he was one of the first guys in the 90s to start racking up vintage gear. And this is an example. This is an API that he racked up and has a power supply. But the ratio of not being a 500, but being a rack with a massive power supply, that API sounds better than my Brent Averill that's racked up running off of 500, because the ratio of the power to these aren't enough. That's why consoles are huge. That's why consoles have power amps that weigh 40, 50 pounds. It's so much power to make audio sound huge. So think about the things that you're going to compromise on and make sure it's worth your value. These Avitas, they can be up to about $1,000 a piece or as low as $600 or $700. Avitas MA5s, I can only describe them as kind of like soft Neves. They give you the Neve brick wall sound, but they're just so pleasant on everything. And if I put a mic up on a jet engine and it goes full bore and I don't die, this volume, you can never overload these, because the volume, as you turn it up, it gets louder or lower. You can never, or APIs, as soon as you snap your fingers, it lights up. It's overloaded. You cannot do that on Avitas MA5s. Then I have Brent Averill APIs here. I have a Brent Averill API. I have a Brent Averill BAE. These are transformerless, so they're clear sounds. And you usually put things to this that are like brass and steel and metal and rooms and violins. So all my overheads, all my room mics, bass DI into this sounds incredible. My toms are always in these. These are my kicks and snares, the APIs and the Neves or guitars, or I'll use the Vetus. And then I use Audioscape to give me that little bit of love of the sound buckling and being vintage. So that is my setup, which is pretty simple. I found a mastering desk that looks tight, but the coolest thing is, though, it's loaded up top to bottom with all my Pro Tools. My Pro Tool system, you can say now, is ancient. It's called an HD rig. Years ago, these were $40,000. Now you can probably find a turnkey rig for about $1,500. They sound incredible. And the only reason I haven't turned into new systems, because I'm lucky enough to still have people want to make a record with me that just want to make a record with me. They're not asking me, do I have the latest Pro Tools, because they're going to send it to a mixer, and there's no, U2's not coming in there going, oh, well, we can record on the latest Pro Tools at, 96K or whatever. Like, no one's asking me for those things. So I can remain on an affordable platform that gives me 24 to 36 ins, and it just sounds godly. You listen to any records in the early 2000s up until maybe 2015, every big studio, every big producer, and I know producers that just in the last year barely turned over from their HD rigs to modern rigs. Now an option to that is to get one of those antelopes like 16 or 32 inch. You get a new Mac loaded up with Pro Tools. I know producers right now that they've gone that way. I may go that way soon. I may just, if I can find an affordable antelope that has enough in it, 32 or 16, I may eventually get rid of this system and load up a new system, and that would be modern. But they're getting away with it. You don't need to spend $10,000 to $15,000 on stuff. Even Universal Audio is pretty expensive when you get all their different platforms, you know. And the problem with that is I do think that the converters into their Apollos, to their smaller units, to their 16 racks, to the 32 racks, all the converters are different and they do different things. I don't want that. That's why I got one Pro Tool system. It's accepting all the audio. It's going to sound out of my speakers exactly what I'm hoping for. And that's why I may convert to a modern system, but for right now, this is the Manny budget, and this works out for me. As we get into my noise generating area, these are just little amps that I use.
His brother, one
that
of them.
give me kind of a David Bowie spinning monster sound. These are called Hollywood film recorders. They came in projectors in the 50s and the 60s. They were like what the sound guy at the movie theater would listen to, what's coming out of the speakers. That's what these are. They sound incredible. This is the new version of what David Bowie would have been on Ground Control, the Major Tom, that really weird spacey synth. The battery's died, or I was going to show you it, but you just run this pin along it and you pick your notes, and then this is a slide bar. I have this synth, which is just, it's called a Micro Brute. It's just incredible. I use it all the time for stuff. This is a Variac, which Eddie Van Halen would have used, and you'll get some people that will fight you on using this or not using this. I've used it on old vintage amps and it's killer. It's basically a big light dimmer, but I can't recommend most people because it could blow up your amp. And Eddie Van Halen used that for his tone. Crucial for me being in sound with drums in the same room. I just got some shotgun headphones for reducing the noise. I got just drawers full of rack stuff. This is a really cool reverb, a Fostex reverb. These are cases that are just holding all my microphones. And because of now the new setup, I went and bought this industrial rack because it's basically full of gear all the way to the top. I think it's rated for thousands of pounds of gear. This is a cool amp that Dave Ketching told me to get. So if you want that Queens of the Stone Age sound, and I think the Decade amps for like $300 to $400, you can find an Audition for like $30 on Facebook Marketplace, and it sounds as cool. Dave also told me to get this Gorilla. So that's a Gorilla amp. He says grab that Gorilla amp and that'll do it for you. I used it, it's incredible. Below it is a mini jazz chorus. I don't think you'll be able to see it. Here's my Mini Brute, miscellaneous drums. And like I said, this also works as a sound diffuser because I just put the curtain down. In the corner, I got the Manny guitar bar. It's 8 guitars in 2 feet by 4 feet, which is pretty massive. It's on wheels, it rolls around. In the old studio, I could have rolled it around, but I had to find a place that it could stay. When I talked about old guitars and old wood, this is a 60s guitars, no brand, made out of Japan, but you know. It just has a sound, and this is $300, $400. So these are the things that I love to get. This is my 8-string hack strum, which would have been like Lemmy from Motorhead. Jimi Hendrix used these on all his songs, and this is definitely a secret weapon that I use all the time. And this is an 8-string bass. It's 2 strings for every one. And once again, these are just things that, like if I'm doing a record, instead of using a plug-in, I have the guitar player play the bass. Now this is a strange one I just got because it's basically a lefty neck. Now why would you get a lefty neck? Well, it's one thing when the metal dudes in the old days wanted lefty necks, but Jimi Hendrix's sound was him playing a righty guitar flip left-handed, and that means the pickups would have been different. Someone in Craigslist was selling a left-handed neck with a left-handed pickup setup. Usually on a traditional Strat, this would be pointing to right here. It wouldn't be angled, but it's the other way around. So I look at it like I'm doing a song that maybe has a Hendrix vibe. This is a guitar that gives me a Hendrix vibe because it's been rewired like a left-handed Strat as opposed to a right hand. So anyways, that's the kind of weird stuff that I'll spend my money on to just get a different guitar sound. And if you put that guitar in the right person's hands, that's incredible. One of the things I'm mostly proud of is this. I'm a guitar player. This is my pedal board. It's a massive pedal board. It's huge, but guess what? It doesn't look huge. And this is a cool tip too. You get a Pelican case. I have a little bit of foam. I got my Rancho little hanky. But my pedal board, when I play live or in the studio, it just comes out in two small pieces. I use these all the time. And that was another way of saving space. You know, you get a Pelican case, measure it out. These are all, you can buy these online, small. And I put some foam in between them. And it really, if I had to jump on an airplane and travel, I made sure that this Pelican was a carry-on. So that's how I travel. That's my pedal board for recording. When a band wants to do some weird guitar stuff, I bring this down, I pop it out. I had this all custom made, so it's just good to go anytime. I don't have to fiddle with stuff. And that's kind of the last of my studio stuff of what I use. And like I said, you got to stay tuned for Manny's mic locker because I'm going to break out all these cases that are really full of my mojo, you could say. And it's all these. So stay tuned for the Manny mic locker. You'll hear all these mics. And once again, these are just storage units for just miscellaneous stuff. My drawers are guitar pedals, more. This is a ring modulator used by like Ty Segall. You can't go wrong with the Rainbow Machine by Earthquaker. I've got two other Earthquaker pedals in here. These are new ones. These ones actually are pretty amazing. I mean, for a studio, they're just so great. This is my Electro Harmonix mini synthesizer, which is a weirdo thing. If you saw us doing the Van Halen song, this is what Eddie Van Halen played. Not this actual unit, but the style. And then I have, my favorite pedal is a microsynth. So you see me have a microsynth there. I got a microsynth here. And I've got another microsynth here. And the secret to these ones is you want to get the ones that have the cable built in. That just means it's a true 80s microsynth, and they do sound incredibly different than the normal one. Here's my little tribute. Gabe Serbian from the Locust had passed away, and I got my little Gabe Serbian shirt that I just carry every now and then. God rest his soul. He was one of the most incredible people, drummers in the world. He was in a band called the Locust. Look him up. And he was just an incredible person. But yeah, I got my little just keeping it there every now and then to remind me of like life's short and you gotta take care of yourself mentally and physically. This is a ring modulator which would have been used by Deep Purple with any synthesizer. So when you hear Deep Purple and the guy soloing John Lord, he's hitting one of these, which is a Maestro ring modulator. And so as you can tell, I got pro audio gear, I got guitar pedals, I have weird guitars, and I've got drums and little amps all hidden away in here. And the most part, I just wanted somewhere where I could work and then just be able to move through the, you know, the different levels of things that you would need to make a record. And I think that's the end of the Manny tour. And I got some cool artwork from Sandra de la Losa, and that always follows me to all my studios. I love it. And up there in the top rafters, there are old drum sets, pro audio gear, and it's just to the top. So anyways, that's the Manny tour. Stay tuned for the Manny mic locker. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully there was something in there that you can apply to yourself. And also my, if you don't know what Land of the Lost or Chaka is, you gotta watch it. This is my Chaka hat. Downtown Rehearsal gave it to me. All right, that's it. Oh, one more thing. My speaker stands here are from a bed. I measured out my speakers. I'm like, where am I going to find a wood? And basically there was a brothel. My friend told me this was a brothel bed. So people were screwing on this. And I said, why not put my speakers on it? And I can still screw on this. So I'm screwing all the time on my bedboard from a brothel. There it is.